Kwame was once a man with everything: his loving wife, Afia, and a life full of respect in the village. But when he met Zuri, a younger and carefree woman, he thought she was the excitement he had been missing. Zuri was full of life, and her carefree attitude was just what Kwame thought he needed. Soon, he started spending all his time with her, neglecting Afia, the woman who had always been there for him. Afia, heartbroken, noticed the change in her husband. She saw how late he stayed out and how little he paid attention to her. One day, Afia confronted Kwame. She asked him what was going on, but he dismissed her, saying she didn't understand him anymore. His words hurt Afia deeply, but she didn't give up on him. She loved him too much and hoped he would come to his senses. She knew there was something wrong with Zuri, but she never imagined just how manipulative the young woman was. Meanwhile, Kwame thought he had found true love with Zuri. She made him feel young and full of life. He didn't see that Zuri had her own plans. She began to take advantage of Kwame's love for her. She convinced him to sell his land and spend his money on things that didn't matter. Zuri's control over Kwame grew stronger, and he started losing everything: his wealth, his reputation, and the respect of the people around him. But Kwame couldn't see the truth. He had made the mistake of thinking Zuri was his future, while Afia, the woman who truly cared for him, was left behind. Kwame's life took a dark turn as Zuri's true nature began to show. At first, it was subtle, small lies and manipulations here and there, but soon Zuri's control over him grew stronger. She convinced Kwame to make risky investments that promised quick returns, but in reality, they were all designed to drain his money. Kwame, blinded by his desire for excitement and youth, ignored the warnings of his friends and family. They could see that Zuri was taking advantage of him, but he refused to listen. He was convinced that this was the life he had always wanted. Afia, however, could see through Zuri's deceit. She watched in silence as Kwame lost more and more, but she never gave up on him. Despite all the pain, Afia continued to support him, hoping that one day he would wake up and see the truth. But as time went on, Kwame's desperation grew. The man who had once been respected and admired was now falling apart, losing his dignity, his wealth, and his self-respect. Zuri, on the other hand, showed her true face. She was not the innocent young woman Kwame had once thought she was. She was cold, calculating, and only cared about what she could get from him. As soon as Kwame's finances were drained and his reputation ruined, Zuri vanished without a trace. She had used him for everything he had, and now she was gone. Kwame was left with nothing but empty promises and the harsh reality of his choices. When Kwame finally realized the extent of Zuri's betrayal, it was too late. His business ventures had failed, and his wealth was gone. He had sold his land, drained his bank accounts, and made decisions that had ruined him. The realization hit him hard, but it wasn't just the loss of money that hurt. He had lost his respect and his reputation in the village. People who had once looked up to him now whispered behind his back, and he could feel their judgment. Afia, who had stayed by his side through it all, saw the pain in his eyes. She still loved him, but the damage had been done. She had tried to warn him, to tell him that Zuri was not the right choice. But Kwame had been too blinded by his desires to listen. Now, Afia was left to pick up the pieces of a life that was once so full of promise. Despite everything, Afia was the one who stood strong. She continued to support Kwame, offering him comfort and understanding. But Kwame knew he had hurt her beyond measure. He had destroyed the trust they had built over the years, and no amount of apologies could bring that back. Afia's forgiveness was a gift, but it wasn't enough to heal the wounds he had caused. As Kwame looked back on his life, he saw how his foolish decisions had led him to this point. He had left a good woman for a temporary thrill, and now he had nothing to show for it. He had been blinded by his own pride, and it had cost him everything. The painful lesson was clear. Sometimes, the things we think will bring us happiness only lead to our downfall. Kwame knew that his life would never be the same again. The weight of his decisions was too heavy to ignore, and the damage he had caused to his marriage with Afia was irreversible. Even though she had forgiven him, the bond they once shared seemed broken beyond repair. Afia's heart was still tender, but her trust had been shattered. She could unforget the way Kwame had rejected her in favor of a young woman who had destroyed their future. Afia's family, especially her elder brother Nana Kwame, had always been there for her. They were disappointed by Kwame's actions, but still cared for him. Nana Kwame was a wise man. and he saw the pain in his sister's eyes. He told Kwame that he had lost more than just money. He had lost his family, his dignity, and the respect of the people who once admired him. He urged Kwame to take responsibility for what he had done, to show Afia that he was willing to change, even if it meant starting over. But Kwame was struggling. He knew he had to rebuild his life, but the path ahead seemed so uncertain. His wealth was gone, and with it, the influence he once held. The people who had once looked up to him now saw him as a cautionary tale. The harsh reality was that Kwame had to start from the bottom, and it was a long, difficult climb back to the person he once was. Afia, despite everything, continued to offer him a glimmer of hope. She didn't give up on him completely, but the scars of betrayal were deep. Kwame knew it would take more than words to prove he was worthy of her love again. Kwame's life began to unravel even further as the days passed. He tried to rebuild what he had lost, but it was an uphill battle. Zuri's betrayal had stripped him of more than just his money. It had taken away his pride, his standing in the community, and most painfully, his sense of self. Everywhere he went, people who had once respected him now whispered about his fall from grace. He couldn't escape the consequences of his actions. As for Zuri, she was long gone, leaving nothing behind but a trail of destruction. Kwame never heard from her again. He had been a pawn in her game, and now that she had what she wanted, she disappeared without a second thought. The man who had once felt invincible was now left with only his regrets. Afia, although still there for him, couldn't heal the wounds Kwame had inflicted. Her heart was torn, and her trust in him was broken. She had given him so many chances, but each time he had let her down. Now, she was unsure if she could ever truly forgive him. She was a strong woman, but even she had limits. Kwame knew that if he ever wanted to rebuild his relationship with her, he would have to prove his worth in ways he had never imagined. Kwame spent countless nights reflecting on his choices, wondering how he had let everything slip away. He couldn't turn back time, but he could try to become a better man. However, the road to redemption was long, and the damage he had done might never fully heal. Kwame's realization hit him hard. He had destroyed everything. His marriage, his reputation, and his future, all for a fleeting moment of excitement. Zuri had been nothing but a false illusion, a distraction from the solid, steady life he had built with Afia. And now, Afia was more distant than ever, though she still offered him a glimmer of hope. Kwame could see the walls she had built around herself. She had forgiven him, yes, but trust was something that could not be easily restored. Kwame knew that the first step in rebuilding his life was to take responsibility for his actions, but it was easier said than done. He had betrayed Afia in the worst way possible, and the guilt weighed on him. Every time he looked at her, he was reminded of how he had taken her for granted. The woman who had stood by him through everything, the one who had always believed in him. But now, she was weary, tired of being let down, and tired of living in the shadow of his mistakes. To make matters worse, Kwame's efforts to rebuild his finances weren't going as planned. The business ventures he had taken on were falling apart, and his former friends, who had once trusted him, were now distant. He felt like he was sinking, with no way to escape the consequences of his actions. But despite the setbacks, Kwame wasn't ready to give up. He knew it was going to be a long road ahead. The redemption he sought wasn't going to come overnight, but he was determined to do whatever it took to earn back the respect he had lost, not just from Afia, but from everyone he had let down. Kwame's journey to redemption wasn't going to be easy. Every step he took forward seemed to be met with a setback. The weight of his mistakes loomed over him, and the people he had once called friends now turned their backs on him. No one wanted to deal with the man who had lost everything, not just his wealth, but also his honor. They all saw him as a cautionary tale, a man who had been blinded by his own desires and had fallen from grace. Afia, though still supportive in her own way, was no longer the woman she used to be. She had changed. Her love for Kwame was still there, but it had become conditional. She couldn't forgive him fully. She had given him chances, but now her heart was closed off, and Kwame could feel it. Every time he tried to prove himself, she seemed to withdraw further. Her actions, though kind, no longer spoke of the deep love she once had for him. She had become a woman who had learned to protect herself, and Kwame realized that he might never be able to win her back completely. The financial struggles were also taking a toll on him. What little he had left was quickly dwindling away, and the failed business ventures he had undertaken only added to the weight on his shoulders. Every plan he tried to put in motion seemed doomed to fail, and with each failure, the pressure mounted. Zuri had disappeared with everything she wanted, leaving Kwame to pick up the shattered pieces of his life. But Kwame didn't give up. He knew that his road to recovery would be long, and even though the scars from his past mistakes would always remain, he had to keep trying. He owed it to Afia, and more importantly, he owed it to himself. As time went on, Kwame realized that his efforts to rebuild his life were only half the battle. He had to face the emotional toll his actions had taken on those around him, especially Afia. While she was no longer the same woman she had been before, she had not completely given up on him. She offered him small acts of kindness, helping him get back on his feet, listening to him when he needed someone to talk to. But there was a distance between them that could not be ignored. The one strong bond of love they shared now felt fragile, as if it could break at any moment. Kwame knew that the trust Afia had for him would take years to rebuild, if it could ever be fully restored. Her forgiveness had been given, but her heart was still scarred. She couldn't forget how he had chosen another woman over her, how he had abandoned her in favor of a fleeting attraction. Despite the hurt, Afia was a woman of strength and grace, and she never let bitterness consume her. She focused on healing herself, and while she supported Kwame, she was cautious about getting too close again. Kwame, though, knew that no matter how hard he worked to rebuild his life, nothing would be complete without Afia by his side. He had made the ultimate mistake in leaving her for someone who never cared for him in the way she did. As the months passed, he made small gestures to show Afia that he was truly sorry and willing to change, but he could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She no longer believed in the man who had once been her everything. She had learned the hard way that love wasn't enough to fix everything. Kwame's journey toward healing was not just about regaining his wealth or his status. It was about restoring the trust he had shattered with Afia. He began to understand that no amount of material success or social respect could make up for the hurt he had caused. He had to show Afia that he had learned from his mistakes, that he had grown as a person, and that he was committed to earning her trust again. But this was no easy task. Afia's heart had been deeply wounded by Kwame's betrayal. She had loved him with everything she had, and he had thrown it all away for the thrill of a fleeting attraction. Though she had forgiven him, the emotional scars lingered. Kwame saw how her eyes no longer sparkled the way they once had. She had changed, Hustazea, but in her silence, Kwame also saw a glimmer of hope. She hadn't given up on him completely. She had let him back into her life, but only as someone who had to prove himself. She no longer needed him to fix everything. She had learned to find strength within herself. Kwame worked tirelessly, not just to regain his financial footing, but to show Afia that he was worthy of her love again. He spent time with her, spoke openly about his regrets, and made sure she knew how much he appreciated her. But Afia, though grateful for his efforts, kept her distance. She knew that it would take time for her to heal, and she didn't want to rush into something that wasn't fully restored. Kwame realized that while he might never fully heal the rift between them, the road to redemption was still worth walking, if only for the chance to become a better man. Kwame had come to terms with the fact that he could never fully undo the damage he had caused. He had lost more than just his wealth. He had lost Afia's unconditional love, her trust, and the respect of his community. But as the months went by, he slowly began to rebuild his life. The road to redemption was long, and the scars of betrayal would always remain. Kwame couldn't undo the past, but he could choose how he moved forward. Afia, while still distant, had softened. She had watched Kwame struggle, but she also saw the man he was trying to become. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy, but he was trying. And in that effort, Afia saw a glimpse of the man she had once loved. She knew that things could never go back to the way they were, but maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to heal together. Kwame knew he couldn't expect forgiveness overnight, but he had learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes, the things we take for granted, like love, trust, and loyalty, are the most important things we have. He had abandoned those things for a fleeting thrill, and in the end, it had cost him everything. But now, as he worked to rebuild his life, he saw that the true value of his past had always been in the love he had with Afia. While their relationship might never be the same, Kwame was determined to prove that he was capable of change. He owed it to Afia, to the people who still believed in him, and most of all, to himself. And so, as he walked away from the past, he vowed to never forget the lessons he had learned the hard way.